Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Friday, July the 14th. And welcome to our commentary. Welcome to our Texas political report with our good friend George Rodriguez from South Texas, where I bet the temperatures are really hot, George. Am I
Yes, it is.
guessing that right?
It hit 105 today, and we were originally going to do this broadcast at 9 o'clock because I had a
Right.
softball game that was canceled at 7 o'clock, and the reason it was canceled was because it's too hot. So
Right.
we're
Well,
we're
you should,
here.
we should do, they should build a roof so
I
you
know,
guys can play.
playing a dome stadium.
Yeah, Dome Stadium, so you can play softball at 7 o'clock. Like right now, it's 100 degrees here, and the Rangers are playing
Yeah,
with the roof. So it's funny. The Rangers are drawing very well, good attendance figures. Now they're also playing very
they're
well.
also winning.
They're also winning, but I would have to think that being able to go out to the ballpark when it's 100 degrees and sit inside, an experience that people in Houston have had for years. I always felt that that would be helpful here. And I think, a good team and a roof can sell a lot
Can
of
really
tickets. They're
do
selling
wonders.
tickets. They're selling a lot of tickets. Well, George, the big story out of Texas this week is the property tax uh, proposal, I guess, that was approved by, I'm not sure if the proposal is the right word, but resolution that was approved by the lieutenant governor and the speaker of the House and is now going to the governor, who said he will sign it. Now, there is a constitutional hurdle. They're going to have to put the exemption on the homes, or the change in the exemption for the homes. I believe that is a constitutional issue that actually has to be put up to a vote in November, George. I think am I understanding that right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. But that should pass. I
Yeah,
think overall, George, that this property tax proposal is really good for people who pay property taxes, obviously. And I think it's a good deal for homeowners. I think it's a good deal for business owners. So I think overall, I got to give an A+ to the governor and the speaker and the lieutenant governor for getting this done, George.
this was a very, very hot topic from day one,
Hmm.
particularly within the ranks of the Republican Party, which is the dominant party in Texas, within the conservative ranks, which dominate the Republican Party. So, I mean, it was a very, very hot issue regarding getting some kind of tax reform, some kind of help for the property owners. Because I'll tell you, the taxes have just been uh, skyrocketing as we grow and as the government grows.
Right.
And to be honest with you, I think the thing that I see very good in this is that uh, when we have limited taxes, it should limit the growth of government.
Right.
Of course, government can always spend money that they don't have, but in this case, I think that will be the very, very good thing. Both the fact that those of us that are retired and are on fixed income are very, very careful about the issue of how much taxes go up from year to year. I think this is going to be good. Now, let me say
Right.
this though. Let
Yeah.
me say this: that one of the things that still needs to be resolved is that a lot of the taxes now, that in fact the lion's share of the tax problems that we're going to be facing as far as increasing, is going to come from the school districts, and that is going to be a very, very pricky uh, issue. If people want to, if the Republican Party, if conservatives want to tackle uh, uh, control of skyrocketing taxes, they're going to have to look at school districts eventually.
Right. No, I think you're right, and hopefully, that's the next target
Yeah.
in this whole thing. But I, I find George that this proposal is going to make Texas even more
More
attractive
attractive. More
because
attractive.
I mean, it's already pretty attractive, but it's going to make it even more attractive because owning a home here is going to be a good deal.
Yeah, you're not
And
penalized. You're not penalized.
that's right. Now, you mentioned that the property taxes are going up. part of the problem, we're victims of our success.
Yes.
We have been flooded. I mean, people are flooding into Texas, and sometimes they bring a lot of cash, particularly if they move from California. And they can drive up the cost of homes. I mean, just talk to any real estate agent here in the North Texas area. I mean, it's just crazy the way these people have driven up the cost of homes. So that, I think, is also the reason why I thought this proposal was a good idea, because the prices of homes were going up very, very quickly, and people were having to pay property taxes over homes that kept going up in value. It might level off a little bit here. So that was, I thought, the good thing, that Texas is going to be more attractive for people who want to move here. And I expect, because of this,
for businesses, definitely.
Absolutely. I expect, because of this property tax change, that more people will move to Texas. I think, and you mentioned business, that's another important part, because this proposal also benefits the construction, will probably result in the construction of more buildings, and perhaps apartment buildings, and just more construction in general, because there's the taxes are going to be favorable in the whole real estate area, George.
Correct. I agree. I mean, it's going to be it'll be very interesting to see the future spin on this whole issue.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, you always have to wait for things to play out. Although I think in general, it will be a good play out. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, we will see the full benefits of this. Now, the Democrats, as you probably know, George, are hoping to do something about renters. They would like to give a benefit to renters, and they would like to do something about school salaries or teacher salaries.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure. I understand the renting problem, because I have friends and people that we know, and the rents, I don't know what it's like in San Antonio, but up here, I mean, the rents have just gone crazy. Yeah. And, people are paying $1,300 one year and $1,500 the next. And there's so much, again, back to the demand question, there's so much demand for good apartments that they drive up the price. So, but mechanically,
let me talk to that.
Yeah.
Because I think that one of the issues that has to be brought forward, and of course the Democrats are never going to do this, is that urban communities, urban governments, should I say, urban governments have extreme control over construction, extreme control. Maybe not so much in Houston, but all the other communities, particularly like Austin, Dallas, San Antonio. And what has happened historically is that rather than address the demand for renters, they haven't. And so that's why you've got rents going. I mean, it's the supply and demand argument. And these folks, these Democrats just refuse to accept that. What they want is subsidy. Right. That's what they want, subsidy.
Well, and that's what they want. They want some kind of a subsidy for renters. And while I sympathize with people who rent, I mean, I can see it with, my wife and I belong to a church organization that helps people pay rent and that kind of thing. And I mean, it's devastating what these rate increases have been for the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, I can see it on black and white, when we see the requests that people are making to pay the rent. I mean, I see some of the numbers and I go, my goodness, how can somebody be paying, that much for a 2 or 3?
And I don't know about Dallas, but here in San Antonio, the big push for renters, unfortunately, is led by groups who don't like property owners, who don't like property ownership.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sorry, what do you call someone who doesn't want you to own property?
Well, I thought it was not a capitalist, that's for sure.
For sure not.
The other group, the other people.
Yeah.
But I don't see, George, just mechanically how you do something for renters. I mean, the only possible idea would be that they would get a check in the mail,
well,
like
and again,
a subsidy.
I
don't see that happening.
That idea is already out there regarding income. universal income. They just get an automatic check.
Right.
So it's not that far away from their mentality. So
No,
you
well,
know, you have to
they've
be
done it in certain cities, like I think in
yes,
California they've done it,
yeah.
but I don't see that happening here. Now, I do
Well,
think
Austin's already got the Austin
the
does
universal.
universal income. So
Interesting. Well, but I don't see that happening out of the legislature,
yeah,
meaning
no,
a
I
subsidy.
would hope not. I would hope
Yeah, I don't see that happening. But I do feel that one of the benefits of this property tax proposal is that as you enhance production, hopefully there will be more inventory,
yes,
and that will help the rent. I mean, the
exactly,
supply and demand thing.
exactly.
But I don't see the state of, I mean, I don't see the state
At
legislature.
this point, I don't see that happening in the state.
No, I don't either. Now, the other issue that the Democrats wanted to amend this proposal and put an increase for school teachers in this proposal and use some of the money for school teachers. But again, I am not opposed to paying teachers
If it
more
goes to the
money
teachers.
if it goes to the teachers. That's the problem. There's so much bureaucracy in the school districts, and I also look. I'm a big believer in school choice, and one of the reasons that I like school choice is accountability.
Yes.
And I think when you look at what's happening in Houston with their school district, and they were literally the state had to take them over because it was such a disaster. And I think that again, I don't mind paying. I don't mind paying a lot of money for school teachers because they're valuable people. They do a lot of work and they teach our kids. Well, I mean, that's pretty
But
important.
as long as it goes to the teachers, and that's the headache that we've got.
Goes to the teacher, and
It'll go to the Department of Education, or it'll go to the school district, and then it goes to more bureauccy.
Well, I also think you have to tie, George, and to me, this is why I support school choice, because you have to tie school salary increases with some accountability. Some of these schools, like the story in Houston, the number of units or schools in the school district of Houston that were not even meeting eighth grade levels.
Minimum. Yes.
Yeah.
Minimum.
How can you increase salaries in a situation like that?
How can you reward?
That's
how can
it.
you reward that kind of industry?
Right. So I think if you want to do some salary increases, there has to be some better results coming out of these public schools. Now, you mentioned Austin, and they have a little problem in Austin, don't they? A little crime problem. And, sometimes you get the feeling that Austin is like in the wrong state. You know what I mean? Because everything that comes out of Austin sounds like it could be coming out of California. And maybe we should trade San Diego for Austin. That would be kind of a cool. That would be a cool trade. But the governor has apparently decided to put more police or more forces in. I have not been to Austin in a while, but have you been to Austin lately?
Yeah.
I mean, is the situation there pretty crazy?
It is really bad. First of all, they have encouraged more homelessness by rewarding it. I mean, that's the only way that I can term it. And so you've got homeless coming in from all over the place and living everywhere. There is still a big debate and a lawsuit over the issue of whether or not a homeless person can set up encampment on private property, if you can imagine. The city council passed an ordinance that allowing the homeless to set up tents wherever there was a space, and that included in private property that was not being used, they claimed, but it soon became on a front yard. So that's been a big headache that they've got. You've got a lot of homeless folks who are mentally disturbed. The other thing is that they also recently, about 3 months ago, passed another ordinance, or should I say another dictate, the city council, where they cut the police even further. They cut the number of staff. They cut the equipment. They didn't want militarized police, as they put it, and they limited their ability to arrest people. Consequently, at this point, I believe that the number of police officers that you've got is the staffing is something like at a 300 person low, maybe 400, but it is extremely low. So that's
Right.
why the governor had to call in the state troopers to help back them up. Because the other problem is that because the police are limited in their ability to arrest somebody, and takes a long time for them to respond, and in many cases the people disrespect them, and it becomes another big issue. The state troopers weren't having that problem. The state troopers were arresting people. That was the end of it. The state troopers were in there picking people up, and of course that went over like a lead balloon.
Right.
So about a month ago, the mayor terminated an agreement with the state troopers and he told the governor to go fly a kite. Well, the governor turned around and sent them right back in. And we'll see how this all plays out, because the city council is threatening civil rights action. The district attorney of Travis County is threatening civil rights actions. And again, many of the leftist liberal activists are claiming that the state troopers are not properly trained and that they are scaring people. So
Right.
we shall see.
Well, if they're arresting people who are committing crimes, I think they've been pretty
That's-
well trained.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's the problem, that they don't, they don't want to treat criminals like criminals.
No.
And they
Well,
want
they're
to
victims
have,
of society. The criminals
Exactly.
are victims of society.
and then you end up, with these videos that we've seen of Austin, with people running cars and
Yeah.
behaving like that. And I'm glad the governor drew the line and said, no, I've got a responsibility to protect the people of Austin. I mean, I've got a responsibility to protect them. So I'm glad.
Wow.
I'm glad that he did that. George, another interesting Texas story. There's a judge. I wish I knew where she was, but there is a state judge who has refused to do same-sex marriages. I'm assuming she's the justice of the peace. Maybe that's because that's the one who does the marriage, right?
Right.
And she refuses to do it on the grounds that her religion, her faith, does not accept same-sex marriage, and she simply cannot do it as a matter of faith. This has become a little bit of a controversial issue, and I don't know how far it's going to go. But her argument is not a bad argument. She's saying, hey, look, I don't believe in this. This is, I cannot because of my faith. And I think she's entitled to having a faith, George.
I agree. I think that this there's two issues that I see very distinct here. First of all, this is not this is similar, but not exactly like the recent Supreme Court ruling on the web designer who had a private business and religious convictions. In this case, we've got a justice of the peace, I believe it is, you're right, who is a public official. And consequently, a public official has got to treat the public equally. In that aspect of it, she might, there may be cause for her to either resign or go ahead and violate her own religious views. On the other hand, this issue of religious views and the dictates of the government as a government official or as a government employee have already been played out. For example, a conscientious objector who doesn't want to fight, who is drafted and doesn't want to fight, they don't have to. They are either dismissed or are placed in another position. That might be the case here. It might be that the courts will rule that that there are many other justices of the peace who could accommodate these folks, and therefore they can do that. The First Amendment of religious freedom, right of religious conscience, I think is going to come more and more to the front as these folks who demand that you like them, who demand that you accept them, keep clashing with it.
Right. No, I think you're right. Now I could see, and this is a wild prediction on my part. I could see this, being challenged in the courts, it would have to go to the Texas State Supreme Court. They would have to rule on it.
Right.
Now, she could appeal that ruling, I suppose, and eventually take it to the Supreme Court, assuming the Texas Supreme Court,
But the silver
tell-
lining in that one, is that she is a state official.
right.
And if the state, an elected state official, and so if the state has already determined that, her conscience matters number one, then I think that these folks are, they can go be married in another state,
That or they can have another judge marry
or
them.
find another
it's-
judge who will do it.
I mean, I don't.
Not the end of the world.
That's right. And I'm not familiar with all the particulars of where this lady works. Maybe she's the only judge. I doubt it, because usually in these districts they have more than one judge. But look, I support the idea of religious freedom.
Correct. Yeah, I do
I
too.
believe very strongly. Now, you could, and we were talking about this off the air, you could have a situation where this goes to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the U.S. Supreme Court says, no, I think she's right.
Yeah, kick it back to the state.
Take it back to the states. And then Texas could conceivably bring back the amendment that we passed. Remember the amendment that we passed almost 20 years ago, defining marriage as between a man and a woman.
Right.
If you remember that amendment, I think it was in 2006 or something when that passed. I don't think it'll go to the U.S. Supreme Court, but I think if it does go to the
I
Texas,
think it'll come back as a state issue, and the state Supreme
Yeah.
Court will say, "Hey, that's her belief. You can find another one." I think it's gonna
and
end
that
up
would
very-
be a victory for me,
yeah.
because you're right. I mean, that is her belief, and she's entitled to it. Well, let me close tonight, George, by asking that question. The big detective question about cocaine
know
in
what
the
you're gonna
White
ask.
House.
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there saying, I guess they don't know who did it, and that worries me a lot because white powder could be a lot more than cocaine. There could be other things.
Baking powder. Baking
It could be
soda.
that, or it could be anthrax. It could
Oh my
be
gosh.
fentanyl.
Yeah.
It could be lots of things. And if the Secret Service cannot,
It can be very dangerous, and you need to find out.
well, it could be
It is, because
dangerous
it's
to a lot
dangerous.
of people.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
if that was fentanyl, that could kill everybody who was within sight.
Yep.
That's pretty powerful stuff. Or anthrax too. So
But apparently the FBI has already said, well, we're not going to pursue the case.
well, yeah, but I mean, how does? I mean, that's what they're saying. I understand that, but how does that work out as far as the national security? Because
Exactly.
I don't see this as a political issue, George.
No, this is
No,
a national.
It's a national security. You're talking about the White House.
Exactly.
And if somebody could walk into the White House with a powder,
Somebody breaks into your house, you demand an investigation, and you should get it. But if somebody breaks into the White House, somebody does something wrong in the White House, I don't know.
well, I think that you always want to give the benefit of the doubt to the Secret Service because they've earned it
Yes.
over the years. I mean, they've earned it. But I just find this whole case to be so bizarre that we don't know who brought in a little bag of powder, who left it there. I thought there were cameras everywhere, George.
Yeah. Well, there are, but
And I guess maybe the dog was asleep or something
yeah.
when.
Well, where was his day off? It was 4th of July.
Yeah,
So he was at the
because
beach.
those dogs are about as good as they get.
Those
when it
dogs are
comes-
the best.
The best. And they can sniff. Somebody was
You got to
telling me.
protect the White House. I mean, they are
That's
the
right.
best.
Somebody was telling me the other day that they went to see President Trump. And before they got to President Trump, this was a citizen who went in to see him. Before they got there, they had to go through not only the metal detector, they had to go through the dogs.
Yes.
I mean, it was pretty intense, this guy
Yeah.
was saying.
Yes.
I mean, anybody who thinks they can bring in a powder to the White House has got to be crazy because you're going to get caught. Well, we
That's right.
thought. We thought.
That's
All right.
what it should be, and that's what it used to be. So I don't
That's
know.
right. That's right. Well, George, I hope you can play your softball game maybe at 11 o'clock tonight. maybe.
No, I think they've rescheduled it for early in the morning tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, that should be all right.
Yeah, that should be
It'll
all
be 110 at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? Well, George, thank you for your time as always, and have a great weekend. And look forward to our next one. We're going to call this thing from now on the Texas Political Report. How do you like?
I like that. It's very good, catchy.
Yeah, it's catchy and very creative. I'm sure that it took me a long time to figure that one out. So I decided to call it the Texas Political Report. Thanks for your time, George, and have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Our good friend George Rodriguez joining us today for our Texas Political Report, where we look at the issues here in Texas. Of course, the property tax, which I think it's a great move, and something that, as I mentioned, is going to make Texas even more competitive as a place to do business, as a place to invest. And then, of course, the situation with the cocaine in the White House, which is really, to me, an embarrassing story, that somebody could bring in powder into the White House and nobody knows who it was. I mean, it's actually embarrassing. And from a national security standpoint, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary because the message we're sending out to people is that you can sneak something into the White House, and that's not the message we should be sending. Well, as I mentioned to George, it's extremely hot here. So if you're listening to me in Texas, I hope you have a swimming pool to go to because it's going to be very hot for the next few days. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.